security content automation protocol is an automation tool that allows you to scan a system against a set of defined security controls. You can learn more on the Cybersecurity Job Aids page, but let's dig a little bit deeper with John Kofer. John's a Senior Information System Security Professional with DSS and also the task leader for automation. John?
Thanks, Chris. So today we are going to be covering the DISA and supplied SPAWARD-created SCAP compliance checker. Again, like Chris mentioned, SCAP is not a specific tool, but rather a protocol that can be used by multiple tools, both freely available as well as purchasable enterprise-level tools. So in our demonstration today, we're going to start you off with showing you how to obtain the actual tools themselves, how to get them installed and running on the machine you wish to test, how to configure them in order to run your scan, and then how to view the results. So we're going to go ahead and jump into our demonstration environment. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up. And while that's getting pulled up, if you'd like to follow along, you can go ahead and open up a web browser, and that will take you to the places I'm going to be demonstrating during this demonstration. So let's go ahead and 1 second, wait for this to come up. Okay. So we are now in our virtual machine, and throughout this demonstration, if we see any hiccups, just know that a big part of that is because we are using a virtual machine here to do this demonstration so that we can show you the difference between a configured and non-configured machine. So the first thing we're going to do is obtain the tools. Now, for the purposes of DSS conducting assessments at your facilities, we are going to be leveraging the SPAWARD tool provided by DISA, which is the SCAP compliance checker. And how you would obtain that tool is by opening a web browser and going to DISA's Information Assurance Security Excellence site, or DISA's IASE site. And we'll just go ahead and wait for that to come up again. And there are a couple of things we need to obtain from this site. The first is going to be the SCAP Compliance Checker executable itself. We are also going to be downloading two files in order to assist us with that. One is going to be the SCAP Compliance Checker benchmarks, which are the parameters that the compliance checker is going to use to scan the system that you are trying to evaluate. The next set of items we are going to be obtaining are the STIG viewer, which is a Java application that allows you to view the results of the SCAP compliance checker, as well as the STIG benchmarks themselves, which are used within that Java application STIG viewer to compare the import of your scan results to DISA's Security Technical Implementation Guidelines, or STIGs. So first off, we are going to go ahead and show you where to go to get these. Again, we are at the iase.disa.mil site. And up at the top, you'll see a bar that says STIGs. And we are going to go down to STIG Technologies, over to Operating Systems. And then because the machine that we're going to be demonstrating today is a Windows machine, we are going to go to Windows. And as you can see here, we have lots of benchmarks that are available. But what we are primarily concerned with are the operating system, or OS STIGs. As you can see, there are STIGs available for multiple versions of the Windows OS. We are most concerned with the Windows 7 STIG because, again, for these purposes, we are using a Windows 7 virtual machine. If you'd like a little bit more detail regarding that, it is a Windows 7 professional image that is configured straight out of the box. So we've done no hardening to our demonstration image. And it is the 64-bit version. Now, when you are downloading the most recent STIG, you're going to want to pay attention to the date field at the top because there are multiple versions for the STIG benchmarks, and you want to make sure that when you're scanning a system that you're using the most recent version of the STIG benchmarks. So as we can see here, we have an update as of 10/28/2016. That is the one we will be demonstrating. We've already downloaded that baseline, but we wanted to show you where to find it. The next thing that we are going to be looking over is the compliance checker itself, which is going to be an application that you are going to download to the actual machine that you're going to be testing. So the SCAP compliance checker, again, is a Windows application, or if you're using a different operating system, it can be for Linux. They also have available for Mac OS as well as Solaris, and a couple of other operating systems such as Oracle. Now, you are going to want to download the version of the compliance checker executable that corresponds to the machine you are trying to scan. So again, since we are using a Windows 7 machine, we are going to download the compliance checker, which is actually under here at the bottom under SCAP tools for the executable. So if we look down, we see here that we have SCAP compliance checker 4.1.1 for Windows. And that is the package that we would download to install on our test machine here. Now, as you can see, that some of this content is PKI enabled. Now, as far as being able to obtain this, you have a couple of different routes you can take, and we have a solution that will fit pretty much any situation. So, the easiest way is if you currently have a contractor CAT card or PKI through third-party DoD PKI. If you have that, then you can download this straight from DISA's IASC website as I'm doing here without any additional steps. However, if you do not have a CAC or a third-party PKI solution in place, you can work with your ISSP to have them sponsor you through the ombmax.gov website. And then you'll be allowed to download these very same tools. The ISSPs have been briefed to this process and are aware of how to sponsor their facilities. It's a one-time thing. It lasts for a year. And the ISSPs are available to do that. We do recommend that you use that as a last resort just because we want to make sure that this is as fluid as possible for you. And if you do have a CAC or third-party PKI solution or a .gov or .mil email address, then you do not need your ISSP to sponsor you. So we will be downloading the Windows SCAP Compliance Checker installer, and we will also be downloading the Compliance Checker benchmark, which is actually the file that is used to scan the system. And for that, you're going to want to pick the one from this very same page under SCAP 1.1 content that corresponds to the operating system of the machine that you want to scan. We see right here we have a Windows 7 benchmark released again on 10/28. This is the one that we would be downloading if we were doing an assessment or a scan of a system today. Again, we've already downloaded these files for expediency purposes. So we're going to go ahead and jump back to the desktop and show you how to get them installed, configured, and then we'll run a scan as a demonstration. So we're back at our Windows 7 desktop, and as you mentioned before, this virtual machine is a Windows 7 Professional Service Pack 1 image. The only thing we have done to prepare this machine, other than downloading the files we'll need to run the scan, is created an administrator account with a username and a password, and downloaded the most recent security pack update. No other hardening has been done to this machine, and we'll get to the reason why we have done that shortly. So the first thing I'm going to do is I've extracted the compliance checker executable from a zip to the desktop, and I'm going to go ahead and install that on the machine. It's a pretty standard Windows setup. It's going to take a couple of minutes. I recommend, unless you're an advanced user and you've done this before, that you stick with the default settings for the setup application and the wizard. If you use the default applications, just clicking through next and agreeing where necessary, you will be set up in a fashion that will allow you to conduct the scans just fine. There is no need to do any other additional configuration. So now that this is finished installing, we are going to go ahead, minimize this, and we are going to do a quick reboot of our virtual machine, because it's always a good idea to do after the installation of a software package that requires administrator privileges, which the compliance checker does. And while the machine is restarting, it should only take a couple of minutes, we can go over what we're going to be doing next, which is actually going into the compliance checker, launching the executable with administrator privileges, configuring it for the system we want to scan, and then running the scan itself, viewing the results, and then showing you how to view those results as compared to the most recent available DISA STIGs. This is what your ISSP will be doing when they're on site along with you. And it's important to note that the compliance checker is a check of the technical security settings of a system. This is not going to be all exhaustive, because there are security controls that are applicable to your system. They're administrative in nature, such as the viewing of event logs, your weekly audits, or however you have set up your auditing paradigm according to your SSP. Manual tasks, these things are not, of course, going to be captured by the compliance checker. Those are manual checks that your ISSP will conduct along with you. What the compliance checker does, however, is allow you to check the security posture from a technical standpoint of the system in a very expedient manner, so that you can focus the time spent with your ISSP, or while you're assessing your own system, conducting those manual reviews for which there is no automated check. So we're going to go ahead and launch the compliance checker. And as we said before, this does require administrative privileges. And the first time you launch it, it can take a couple of minutes to come up, but I anticipate this will take no longer than about 20 or 30 seconds for this window to go ahead and launch for us today. And once it's launched, again, we'll get into making sure it is set up for this specific system. So I'm going to maximize this window so you can see the compliance checker window, and now we are in the SCAP compliance checker application. As you can see, I've set it to scan the local computer that I'm using, this virtual machine. And for your multi-user or single-user standalones, this is how you would do it. You're not going to be scanning across the network, of course, for your MUSEs or SUSEs. You can, however, scan across the network as long as you have domain admin privileges on the machine you wish to scan. And there are instructions within the compliance checker download in the form of a PDF to walk you through that process. Since we only have a limited amount of time today, we are not going to be doing a network scan. We're going to be scanning a local machine. So now that we have launched the compliance checker, the first thing we're going to do is go into the Edit column and go to Content and Options. And what this is going to give us are all of the benchmarks that are currently loaded within the compliance checker, preloaded for you when you download it. Now, because the compliance checker itself, these benchmarks are only updated when the compliance checker itself is updated, the actual application. So there's a very good chance that the most recent benchmark for your operating system is not going to be preloaded into the compliance checker. That's why we showed you where to download it. Now I'm going to show you how to import it into the compliance checker tool. So the first thing I'm going to do is right-click on any of these check marks and click Clear All Selected Streams. That way, we are only going to be scanning against the benchmark that we have chosen. The next step would be to install SCAP content. So I'm going to go to my desktop where I've downloaded the SCAP content. And go ahead and open these. And you'll see that we have all SCAP content has been installed successfully. And if we scroll down, we'll see the benchmark we just imported under Windows 7 right here with a 2016 date. So I'm going to go ahead and select that benchmark. The next thing I'm going to do is come over to Profile, where we are going to tell the compliance checker which profile we want to scan our machine against. For the purposes of our NISP systems, we are going to be using the MAC3 classified profile. And the way you access that is just to left click where it says MAC 1 under profile and select MAC 3 classified. Next, I am going to go ahead and apply this profile by clicking OK at the bottom. And now it's loading into the compliance checker tool as the benchmark by which we are going to scan this machine. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and launch the scan, and you'll be able to see as it's going through what it's checking. It scans by pretty quickly. It'll stop and hang on a couple of different checks that are a little bit deeper and a little more resource intensive, but all in all, for a Windows 7 machine with a few gigs of RAM, whether 32 or 64-bit, you're looking at between 45 seconds and 2 minutes for this entire scan to execute. So we're going to go ahead and kick it off. And as you can see, it's running. We'll start getting some output text that's going to let us know. And if you see right here, it shows us the benchmark we have selected, as well as the version numbers. And then it'll start scanning against the DISA benchmark for this operating system, which again is Windows 7 Professional 64-bit. And while this is scanning, because again we have some time, we do want to go over the fact that the SCAP compliance checker, as we said before, is just one SCAP solution that you can leverage. There are enterprise level tools. Some facilities may already have ones in place that are compliant with SCAP. And what we can do while this is scanning is I'll go ahead and open up Internet Explorer briefly, because what I want to do is point you to a resource that if you want to look to a more feature-rich or comprehensive enterprise-level solution that still leverages the SCAP benchmarks, then NIST has actually published a list of providers that you can utilize for that purpose. So we'll go ahead and wait for this to load. And if you see right here, these are SCAP-validated products by both government providers such as SPAWARS, which is what DISA uses, the compliance checker. We also have IBM, Microsoft, Tenable. A lot of companies we've heard of before do have enterprise solutions that leverage the SCAP protocol. So by now, our scan should be nearing completion, if not complete. Yeah, so we're almost there. And we will go ahead and let this finish so we can look at the results of our scan. And this is one of those tests. Sticks usually about test 145. We're just digging deep into the registry, and it takes a couple of minutes to finish. But all in all, we are making good progress. There are 278 checks on this, and we are almost done. At the end, it's going to give us a score, which is a percentage score, as well as a red, yellow, green rating as far as to the security posture of the machine that we are scanning. Right now, it's just generating our final reports, which we will go over briefly once it's done, and show you how to navigate those and how you can use those to kind of give you a better picture of where you need to go as far as configuring your machine from the technical security control standpoint. All right, it is wrapping up. Okay, so our scan is finished, and as we can see, as to be expected, we are in the red. This machine scored a 30.58% as far as a compliance state, which is, of course, quite poor. But as we mentioned, we are using an image of Windows 7 that has had no hardening, no security controls, no security settings added to it other than what was needed to just start up the machine and log into the operating system. So what we're going to do now is show you how to view these results in a little bit more detailed fashion. The first is the report that's actually generated from the compliance checker that you can view right now without having to do anything else with any other program. So if we go to Results and go to Open Results Directory, then Explorer is going to navigate to the folder containing the results of our scan. We are going to go drill down to that folder, The name of our PC is right there. This is the benchmark we ran. And here we have a date and time stamp for the most recent scan we created. And because your continuous monitoring, I'm going to stop right here for a second, your continuous monitoring requirements are going to most likely include maintaining the results of the scans that you do as part of your continuous monitoring. This tool does it automatically for you. So on the local machine where you're conducting these scans in this directory, if you've set it up with the default settings, which again, you can always move this directory if you choose, it is going to save to a folder with a date and a timestamp every time you run this scan on this machine. So you have it logged and archived right here, so you can always go back and see previous scan results. I'm going to go ahead and drill down into this folder. And before we dig into the output that we are going to put into the STIG viewer, we do want to show you that you right now, without having to go to another program, have an HTML report that's ready for you that will show you the results of the scan. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up just so you can see what it looks like. Whether or not you choose to use this is, of course, up to you, but it is a helpful feature to have available. So as you can see, again, we scored 30.58. Again, many of you who have used this tool before or have been involved in SAP programs are familiar with this report. We can see that we had 85 control checks passed, 193 failed. Again, our compliance status is red. Our score is 30.58. And as we scroll down, it gives us the information about our system, the benchmark we used, our profile, the STIGs that it was compared against, and then we get into the actual results. And any of these results, these are all hyperlinked within this document. So let's say, for instance, we see our first failed result right here. Floppy media devices are not allocated upon user login. If we click on that, it's going to bring us to the rule ID right here, the STIG rule ID that governs this particular check, as well as telling you what the, in a more verbose fashion, what the failure was and how to remedy it. So that is the HTML report, and that gives you a great jump start, but what we're going to do is take this a step further and actually use the STIG viewer to show the relationship between the vulnerabilities that were found on this machine by the compliance checker and the DISA STIGs themselves. So I'm going to drill one folder down into XML, and the file we are looking for is always going to be at the bottom, and it's XCCDF results. This is the file that's going to be imported into the STIG viewer. So what I'm going to do is minimize our compliance checker and copy this file to the desktop just for the sake of convenience and expediency. You can always drill down within the STIG viewer if you do not wish to put these files on your desktop. And then we are going to go ahead and fire up the STIG viewer. The STIG viewer is also available on the ISE website and under the same menu we showed you before, where the STIGs are located, and is not PKI restricted. So this is the STIG viewer. This is version 2.3. As you can see, we have no content loaded into it right now. So that's the first step we're going to do. So I'm going to go to File, Import STIG, and then navigate to my desktop where I've saved the files that I'm going to be using. Little slow today, but we will get there. Well, looks like we're going to have a little bit of extra education today. We're going to go ahead and download the file itself, save ourselves some time as opposed to having to scrub for this. So again, Back to the IAC website, STIG Technologies, Operating Systems, Windows. We're going to go to Windows 7 right here, and this is what we're going to be using. I'm going to go ahead and download this. And move it to our desktop. So we got an extra little treat today while we did that. Going to go back to import stig, grab that file we just downloaded. It is a zip file, so we're going to want to tell it to look for that. And here it is. We're going to go ahead and open this. Now, before I click open, I am going to tell you that when you do this, it is going to tell you that the import failed. That is normal. It happens pretty much every time with this version, this release. There is no functionality problem with that. It's just an error message that pops up that you can dismiss. And as you can see, after a couple of seconds, it will populate. So here are all the vulnerability IDs associated with the STIGs for Windows 7. And what we are going to do now is take the results, that XCCDF file that we exported from the compliance checker, and import it into the STIG viewer to compare it to these vulnerability IDs and give us a deep dive into the individual vulnerabilities within our system. So in order to do that, the first thing I need to do is tell the STIG viewer which STIGs I want to apply the import to. I'm going to select all of them just by checking the checkbox for Windows 7 Security Technical Implementation Guide, which is the benchmark we just went back to IASE and downloaded. The next thing I'm going to have to do if I want to compare this to my scan results is click on Checklist and Create Checklist with selected STIGs. So that's going to open a new tab with a checklist that has been created based upon the STIGs that we selected, which are all the Windows 7 STIGs. The next thing we are going to do, and this is where the merging comes between the compliance checker results or any SCAP protocol export and the STIG viewer and the DISA STIG benchmarks, is we're going to compare the two to each other. So I'm going to go to Import XCCDF Results File. I'm going to navigate to the desktop where I saved that XML file. And you can see it right down here at the bottom. These are the results of our compliance checker scan. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up. And while I'm waiting for that to import, I'm going to go ahead and minimize some of these bars here. And we have it right here in front of us where we can see that we have now 189 open findings, 85 findings that were closed or not vulnerabilities, and we have 47 that were not reviewed. The not reviewed section is almost always going to consist of those manual checks that we discussed briefly earlier. Because the STIGs aren't just technical checks, they do cover the managerial, administrative, those kind of checks as well. But as you can see, with 47 of them not reviewed out of close to 300, it does give us a jump start on checking the compliance state of our machine. You can see right here we have CAT severity levels, CAT 1, CAT 2, and CAT 3, starting with CAT 1 as being the most severe and CAT 3 being the least severe. Want to make it clear that DSS and the NISP Authorization Office are not citing vulnerabilities with CAT severity levels. But what you can do is you can use CAT 1, CAT 2, and CAT 3 tabs to prioritize how you mitigate your vulnerabilities. Because of the way that this is set up, those vulnerabilities found under CAT 1 are going to be your most severe vulnerabilities. Good security practices dictate that those will be the ones you want to apply your energy to first and then move on to your less severe vulnerabilities. In this table right here in the middle, we can sort by type. So I'm going to sort it, and it's going to show me right now all of the open vulnerabilities for this system that align with the CAT 1 delineation. And as you can see right here, we have a couple of tabs on the right there to give us more information about that. So I'm going to go ahead and select the first one. And as you can see here, it gives a discussion point for this, telling you basically the spirit of this vulnerability check. The Check Content tab is going to show you how to check and see if your system is configured in the proper way. As we can see, this requires a change to the registry. It may require the adding of a registry key or the modification of a registry hive. But the two tabs that you're going to find most likely the most helpful are the third and fourth tabs. The third tab for each vulnerability that's found is a fix text, where it's going to tell you exactly step by step how to go into the machine settings and fix this vulnerability. So right there you have not only the identification of a vulnerability, but how to actually go about fixing it. And then the fourth tab is the CCI tab. This is where you're going to get your help when it comes to your security plan, your SSP, and your documentation. Because what this will do is it will tell you, as you can see right here, what missed control, in this case it's SC4, out of 800-53 Rev 4, this particular vulnerability setting applies to. So not only do you have the vulnerability identified, you've been told why that's a vulnerability, you've been shown how to fix it, and now you can also see what control that applies to, so that you can go in and document that in your plan as if as fulfilled, or if you cannot meet if you cannot meet that control, and it's a control that's required within your SSP. You can also know where you need to write your mitigating instructions and how to address it on your POAM, because you do have to, identify which security control this vulnerability is attached to within your POAM. So this is the STIG viewer in a nutshell. I'm not going to go through all 189 vulnerabilities that were found, but we kind of just wanted to give you an overview of how to run the scan, configure the tools, look at the results, and then go through and address those results. Now, we do want to put out there that we do have on our DSS external website at www.dss.mil/RMF two guides there. The first of which is called Getting Started with the STIG Viewer and SCAP Compliance Checker. That is a document version of everything we are doing today. It's going to walk you through how to obtain the tools, how to install them, how to configure them, how to run them, and how to view the results. So if this went a little bit too fast for you and the recording isn't helpful, or maybe you just like to have a reference next to you while you're doing it, that is available right now on our DSS external website. So that concludes the demonstration of the SCAP compliance checker itself. However, we also have one other thing we are going to be demonstrating, and this is something that is going to be rolled out within the next month or two for our facilities, and that is our NISP Authorization Officer, or NAO, GPO tool. Now, for the sake of time, I am not going to go into how to use tools that apply INF or .pol files or anything like that. You can use Windows SCM, which is available in all professional versions of Windows. You can use a free utility called LGPO that is provided by Microsoft, but any software tool that you can use with administrative privileges to read INF files can be used to apply the NAO GPO. The NISP Authorization Office has actually developed a GPO, or a group policy object, that will represent roughly a 90% solution when you're first standing up a new machine. What it's going to do is it's going to take, say, for instance, a Windows 7 box that's been turned on right out of the box and powered on, and it's going to give facilities a method by which you can bring your machine to roughly 85 to 90% of compliance to technical security controls within a few minutes, as opposed to having to go through hundreds of different security settings and registry options in order to harden your system. Again, this is not a requirement for our standard ANA systems. You do not have to use the GPO, and the GPO is use at your own risk. But we did want to put something out there that could give our industry partners a jump start in configuring their systems, especially if they're not used to doing it according to the RMF parameters. So, again, for the sake of time, I am not going to walk through how to actually use the administrative level tools such as SCM to do this, but I will demonstrate the GPO configuration itself so you can see the difference. So, the GPO has already been downloaded to this machine. It is right here in this folder. And what I'm going to do is close down the compliance checker and the STIG viewer. And if you remember, our PC right out of the box is at a 30.58% compliance state prior to the application of any security settings, which we will do now with our GPO. And again, I'm using the LGPO tool as a command line utility, but that is not your only option. But it is an easy one if you're comfortable with the command line, and it is free. However, there are GUI-based tools such as Microsoft's SCM you can use to do this. So I've identified a GPO, and I'm going to go ahead and have it apply the settings. Now, as you can see, as this is scrolling through, this saves a lot of time by applying the security settings, any registry keys that need to be changed, modified, added, or removed. And again, this is in an INF INF file format, so you can use this with SCM. We're going to go ahead and let it run. And we do encourage facilities that if they do not already have something like this or a script or something that they're using to configure their systems, once you've configured your system with our GPO, as with all things RMF, all environments are unique. So once you've run our GPO to get initial configuration state, you can always make changes that align with your system security plan and then save that as a GPO to use when you're standing up additional machines that are proper for your environment. So our GPO is finished running. I'm going to go ahead and close this down. We're going to do a quick restart, and then we're just going to show you the difference between a non-configured system and a system that's had the GPO that we have provided or will be providing run on that system. And like we said, this is meant to be a 85 to 90% solution. It is not going to configure your system 100% for you. We've done it that way for two reasons. Number one, we need to discourage the idea that running the tool is all you'll need to do to secure your system. Every environment is different. You're going to need to configure your system in a way that's appropriate for your environment and your application. The second is that this is meant to be user-friendly to a certain degree, meaning that we want to make sure that we do not, for instance, harden a machine to the point where if you, when you initially set it up, did not have a strong administrator password, that you were then locked out of your machine. So we did leave a couple of settings unaddressed, but that was deliberate. As you can see, it is finished running. It is restarted, and the first thing we're greeted with is the Control-Alt-Delete prompt, which, as you saw before, we were not greeted with. This is something that we are all used to seeing. And if I go ahead and hit Control-Alt-Delete, we can see that the warning banner has been applied. We're going to go ahead and log into the system. And once the desktop finishes loading, I'm going to go ahead and, again, just for the sake of expediency, I'm going to launch the compliance checker so you can see the difference. And your ISSPs have been briefed on this tool as well as on the GPO, and we'll make an announcement within Voice of Industry and also through your ISSPs when the GPO is available. So I'm going to scan the local computer again, but before I do that, I'm just going to double check real quick to make sure our same baseline has been loaded, which, as you can see, it has. So we're using the same benchmark that we used to scan the machine the first time. And I'm going to go ahead and kick this scan off. Along with the GPO, we will be releasing instructions on how to use it and how to apply the settings using the LGPO application, which is what you just saw me use. However, if you are a user who is more familiar with Microsoft's SCM or any other tool that can read policy files, GPOs, and apply them to a machine with administrator credentials, you can absolutely use that. But we are going to be demonstrating this because LGPO is free and doesn't require too much experience other than just a general knowledge of the command line. So we're going to go ahead and wait and let this finish running. We're almost done. And so it's writing our reports. And as you can see, we have gone from 30.58% to almost 90% compliance just by using this tool. We're talking hundreds of settings. Actually, it's well over 1,000 that were applied to this that this GPO addresses. From the registry to the security policy, everything you're used to doing manually, step by step, sub-step by sub-step, this is taking care of quite a bit of it for you. And this is something that NAO will be maintaining. And once made available, we'll be keeping maintenance on. So again, it's a 90% solution. It doesn't get you the whole way there, but it gets you a good portion of the distance to the finish line. So that is it as far as the demonstration of the compliance checker, the STIG viewer, and our GPO. So I'm going to go ahead and hand this